What is cool? Could be with the channel? It's your boy Bobbalam. In today's video, we're talking about the SoundCloud greats. Now, before you watch this video, make sure to go comment right now and like, but mostly comment your SoundCloud greats, because I actually am genuinely curious as to who you think are or should be considered the legends of SoundCloud. Most likely referring to, you know, the 2016, 2017, maybe even 2018-ish era of SoundCloud, where it was at its peak, at least in hip hop, with like XXXtentacion, Trippie Redd, Uzi. I don't want to get too far into it because we're going to go over what SoundCloud deemed as the legends, considering it is their platform. So we're going to see if they got it right. But to get right into it, Lil Uzi Vert, Young Thug, XXXtentacion, and more officially named SoundCloud greats. Now, I assume this is a similar concept to the Mount Rushmore, like the ultimate godfathers of the SoundCloud generation, meaning that most rappers would not be rapping on SoundCloud or dropping music there today if these rappers were not around that made SoundCloud its name. I feel like with the access of all of these, you know, easy distributors, you can put your music on Apple Music and Spotify, YouTube, everywhere where it's monetized, as opposed to SoundCloud at essentially the same ease. But still, people do be uploading on SoundCloud. I don't necessarily use it anymore. I did back in those days though. SoundCloud changed the music industry in a way that will go down in history. The platform allowed artists a space to upload their music without the pressures of the industry keeping them from sharing their art. Hip hop saw an influx of new artists from SoundCloud into the game and became stars in their own right. Facts. And now we get into the artists. The first artist to receive their flowers was Lil Uzi Vert on November 1st, and SoundCloud showed love to this top track on the platform, XO Tour Life, and his first upload, White Shit, on Christmas Day 2013. Okay, so there's like a trend going on here that Uzi and Cardi both like to drop on Christmas Day. Maybe it's because they're both satanic. I'd have to agree. I said this in last video or 2 videos ago. Uzi, when you think of the SoundCloud generation in 2016, I think he is the top face. Now, Lil Pump, I feel like, may have a more mainstream aesthetic or look to him than everybody else, whereas Gucci Gang went mega viral. And so even like our moms and dads saw it on the news, because even Fox and CNN were probably showing something about Lil Pump, whereas Uzi was more so branded around his music, even though he did have colored hair. But performance wise, I think Uzi is at the top of this generation. Like streams wise and just brand wise, he is the top rapper from the 2016 SoundCloud generation, other than maybe XXXtentacion. But RIP, he's not here to progress his career. Not to mention XO Tour Life blew up solely on SoundCloud. It wasn't even dropped on all streaming platforms at the time. It was just SoundCloud on Love Is Rage 1.5, and it blew up organically. And that's basically why SoundCloud inherited such glory, because you basically try out songs, test it on this platform. If it blew up there, then you can start monetizing off of it. So SoundCloud was like the first test pool with your most diehard fans. But they said next, Trippie Redd was highlighted for his 2015 SoundCloud debut with Dirty Red and his top track on the streaming service, Love Scars You Hurt Me. I'd have to agree, Trippie Redd is definitely one of the greats of SoundCloud. I mean, him and X do quite literally have the top streamed hip-hop track on SoundCloud ever with Fuck Love. I think BTS passed them if we're talking about all genres, but if we're sticking to just hip-hop today, which we always do on this channel, Trippie Redd is definitely an all-time great. You cannot deny that. Same with Uzi. Not to mention he fits that SoundCloud aesthetic with like the dark red hair. I think he had purple too. But next we got Young Thug, Smoke Perp, Ski Mask the Slump God, and the late XXXtentacion were also celebrated for their contributions to the platform respectively. Now, I have no apprehension in celebrating all these artists for their contributions to the platform, but if we're talking about the SoundCloud greats, like this hashtag right here is telling us, I do not think necessarily that Young Thug would be considered a SoundCloud great. He's definitely one of the most influential rappers ever, but I don't think of SoundCloud when I think of Young Thug. I think of like Atlanta, pushing the boundaries with melodies and flows in the most experimental and unorthodox ways, influencing that of Uzi, who we spoke about, Playboi Carti, pretty much every single person, especially with dressing in a more feminine manner, whereas he was basically Jesus who got crucified for that. But now rappers nowadays like Kid Cudi, literally wearing a dress and holding the designer's hands at the red carpet, and people really don't care, or as much. So Young Thug, an all-time great, but I wouldn't say he's a SoundCloud all-time great. Let the kids handle that, bro. Now, I'm not hating on Smoke Perp and Ski Mask Slump God either, because they definitely have their high rankings, maybe even like Lord status in the SoundCloud greats. However, they're not necessarily, in my opinion, on the same tier as like Trippie Redd, Uzi, and X. I think X is the king of SoundCloud. I think we can all agree on that. I'm pretty sure even SoundCloud said that. No hate towards Ski Mask, but if there was no X, he would not be to the same size as he is now today. That being said, I always say that skill and just charisma always sees the light eventually. Like, X isn't the only reason that he blew up. Ski Mask is a really talented rapper, but without X, we're seeing how, you know, Sin City or whatever his latest mixtape was called isn't really doing that well anymore. Like, he kind of got left in the dust in the SoundCloud era. It's just not hitting the same anymore. I know people are gonna slaughter me, but things need to be said. And then a similar concept with Smoke Perp, and that Smoke Perp would not be at the same size as he is today without Lil Pump. Now, do I think Smoke Perp is a better artist musically than Lil Pump? Yes, but the antics of Lil Pump, whereas Smoke Perp kind of tagged along and kind of did similar antics, it blew them both up past just their music. But now that both of them kind of grown up without Pump and Perp like side by side as a duo, they're not doing too well. I think Smoke Perp's last project sold like 4K or maybe even less than that, because the last mixtape wasn't even reported, but it only had like 4 or 5 songs. We're gonna cut him a break. But you know what? I'm actually gonna change my mind about Ski Mask. I think he did make a big enough impact in SoundCloud rap to earn a ranking as a SoundCloud great. Smoke Perp's Audi song too, like, I get it, but still, they're like tier 2 as opposed to Trippie Uzi X as tier 1. Y'all agree with me? Let me know in the comments. And then lastly, they named X, saying no matter how you look at it, XXXtentacion's music changed the scene. Through real and vulnerable lyrics with a raw sound, Ja was able to strike a chord and connect with listeners in a profound way. And as I said before, I think XXXtentacion is literally the king of SoundCloud. In fact, most of his songs that blew up before he was even out of jail were strictly on SoundCloud. He only had like 2 or 3 projects before he passed away that were on all streaming platforms, whereas everything else was on SoundCloud. And Look at Me was the SoundCloud exclusive song that literally took over all of South Florida. I lived through it, and arguably changed the trajectory of hip hop due to the distorted 808s. And not just any 808s, but the ones that literally sound like they're breaking your speakers. And then of course we've got to add to our list, and the reason that I kind of put Ski Mask and Smoke Perp and even Young Thug as a tier 2. Thug, I don't even know, he shouldn't even be on the list because he was more of a major act before the SoundCloud era even began. But I think this reply on Twitter kind of hit the nail on the head, in that they added Juice WRLD, which was a little bit later in the SoundCloud era, 2018-ish, with All Girls Are the Same and Lucid Dreams, that ended up being like top 100 hits. And he and XXXtentacion kind of paved the way for emo rap, along with Lil Peep as well, who should definitely be considered a SoundCloud great, even though he was more on like the alternative rap. I don't even know what genre you would call that. Oh, and Lil Yachty, oh my god, with his Summer Songs EP, Broccoli. He's probably one of the main rappers that people see when they envision the SoundCloud era as well, with like the red hair beads. You had to have colored dreads or braids. Lil Pump, like I said, should be a SoundCloud great. As much as it hurts me to say, but Gucci Gang went mainstream, even though it was a completely trash song. And then Denzel Curry, I would say he's definitely up there. I'd say tier 2 though. He's not with X, Juice WRLD, Trippie, Uzi, Pump, Peep. He just wasn't hitting the same sort of impact, although he definitely did have a massive impact within this era. And then the last one, I would say maybe Playboi Carti, although I was a little bit late on that train and didn't really listen to Playboi Carti on SoundCloud like that, such as all of the songs included in the In Abundance fan-made compilation tape for Playboi Carti. But if we're speaking facts here, within this SoundCloud generation, maybe on the latter half, Playboi Carti's beat selection, and still to this day, does influence all of the rappers to come, in that before he had like the bouncy 808s with Pierre Bourne style, now he has like the dark rage, which has taken a life of its own, with the help of Trippie Redd, who maybe had a greater influence on that side of things. But if we're including Playboi Carti, we also got to say the Activist, Thousand Band Fani, Lucky, and maybe some other names that I'm forgetting in this like 2015 era of SoundCloud before it got super popular, and to this day still remain underground, and that's why I think people overlook them. But anyway, with all that being said, y'all let me know in the comments your SoundCloud greats. It doesn't matter how many, you can give like 15, 20, I do not care. But please do not be saying some of these newer generation SoundCloud artists, I fuck with them, but to be considered greats, we gotta wait a couple years. LeBron James isn't in the Hall of Fame just yet, although he would be considered a great already. But still, he's been in the league for like 15, 20 years. But it's been your boy Bobbalam signing off. Make sure to like and subscribe, join the Bow Gang if you with it. Peace out, God people. Know what I'm saying?